This evening we're starting this course on reason and religious beliefs, or belief. I'm not sure what the calendar says. And this evening I'll spend my time, or most of my time, trying to encourage you not to take the course. I do this regularly, and there's no reason not to do it, even though you out there might be interested in doing it, and especially when you can sit there with your popcorn and your beer. Okay, so the topic tonight is teasing. I was going to sing an old Irish song about teasing, but we'll save it for another day. Teasing in a lot of ways, and for instance, the title of the 9 sections of tonight's session begin with T. It helps you to remember these things. Let's jot them down. And this is something I do every night, or every class, and those of you who have been in my class before know that I sometimes have a terrific list on the blackboard at the beginning, and we don't get past the first topic. And that's one thing about the course. We're not in a hurry to cover anything. What we want to do is discover something. Now, what are we going to discover? That will take some time. What are we going to discover? My first point then is, this is a teasing session. My first time lecturing, it was in mathematics. It was an honours class in mathematics in Dublin University, and the professor told me the policy. I said, how do I go about it? He said, well, for the first 3 weeks, lecture over their heads, and then you'll clear out the class, and the few interested people will be there, and you'll have a great year. Okay, so the teasing mainly has to do with wanting you to be really interested. And you have to find out yourselves, why am I doing this? Well, I'm free on Wednesday evening, and hell, I can watch it on Duet on the bad evenings. Yeah? Well, it's a reason. Okay, so teasing. Now, my first topic is precisely this. Encouraging you to transfer, okay? Teasing towards transfer. Or, this is the second possibility, it might work, towards thought. I'll spend about 10 minutes on that, and then I'll talk about the title. I'll talk about the 4 words in the title, and the topic. What is the course about? And then number 3, we will turn to question mark, a trivial trial. One of the meanings of the word tease is brain teasing, puzzling. Is that familiar to you in Canadian English? Sometimes I recall, is it Chesterton or George Bernard Shaw who said that the Americans and the British Isles, it's 2 continents separated by a common language. My God, well, one laugh, thanks be to God. Okay. It can be difficult. I was traveling in Paris once with an American fellow, and he went off to have a sleep after lunch. And I said, well, in the afternoon, we'll be going out, so I'll come and knock you up. Completely different meaning in American. Okay, trivial trial, question mark. The next topic is texts and talks, the connection between the texts and the talks. Number 5, and this is an optimistic twist on an old word, thankful tasks. You talk about thankless tasks. I'm hoping that you will find that these are thankful tasks. They're brain twizzlers, teasers, whatever. Number 6 is the middle of our topic tonight, and I call it the theorem. A theorem, a proposal, something we can test very, very slowly. Number 7, I want to talk about techniques. What's a technique? And how does it help and how does it handicap? Number 8, I want to talk about transformations. Changes, transformations. Think of something like the tadpole becoming a frog, or you becoming something else. And number 9, continuing my tease, try, twice, thrice, thousands of times. Okay. Okay, that's our program for the 2 hours. And this brings us right back to the beginning. Try twice, thrice, thousands of times. How many times do you have to try? Maybe thousands of times. Okay, I won't wipe that out. Teasing towards transfer or thought. Now, I want to tease you. I can come out bluntly and say, for God's sake, don't take this course. But maybe you should. You've got to find that out. Now, why do I say don't take this course? Because you may be the sort of student who's doing brilliantly, you're getting 80s all the way because you have a tremendous memory. You've been memorizing your way right through your school days, right through university days, and it's going good, as you say in Canada. I'm getting used to your English, you see. We in Ireland say we're doing well, but well is something you find out in a field in Canada. I'm only joking. Okay, so 5 points as I tease you not to take the course. The first point is it's not memorization. Now, I hear some of you saying, great, that's true, I'm just fed up memorizing stuff. And that can be a mistake. Sometimes students come to me after about 4 weeks and they say, would you tell me what I have to memorize for the midterm? And it's too late. How many of you do memorize a bit during classes? Nobody? It's all right, you're not on camera. And I'm not talking now, say, about the Mount as a university. I'm talking generally. I will say things about education here that may shock you. I'm not just talking about Mount St. Vincent's. I recall once interviewing a German philosopher, Gadamer, and Gadamer was 75 at the time. I have a videotape of him, and it was marvelous the way he talked about the situation in Germany, and he said it is just narcotized receptivity. Narcotized, yeah? You're numb and you're receiving. You listen, you write it down. I hate telling old jokes, but you know the old joke about the difference between the university and high school. High school, the teacher comes in and says good morning, and the kids say good morning. And university, you come in and say good morning, and they write it down. Okay, so this is not just a disease of the new world, although it is in fact quite prevalent. It's something that has come into education, and it kills off human beings. Now, there's a sense in which we attempt a rescue operation in this reflection, in that I don't want you to memorize. I want you to understand some things. You can actually get the credit by memorizing. But it's pretty wasteful. When you memorize something, it fades. They'll tell you in psychology, they'll give you the graph of decay. How many of you can remember, say, the definition of a circle? How many of you learned it in school? Yeah? It's gone, isn't it? Yeah? Why is it gone? Because you didn't actually learn. We'll find gradually, and it's part of this theorem, that if you understand something, it sticks. You've got it. You don't forget it. You don't need your notes. Yeah? Okay, not memorization. The emphasis is on understanding. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, that's the topic of the course, in a very fundamental sense. But whose understanding? Well, it'll take us a little time to get to that. Okay, so not memorization, but understanding. What's that all about? Well, we have to come to that gradually. And notice my hand. How are we going to get at it? By going round and round and round. Yeah? Isn't there some song that sings once, twice? Yeah? Anyone willing to sing a? Okay. Not memorization, but understanding. Second point is that it's slow. And this is terribly important in your education, to notice that understanding comes slowly. When you read the history of achievement, you find it very paradoxical. The people who achieved and whom we have admired for centuries were desperately slow. I love telling students that Aristotle was in the academy, Plato's academy, for 18 years and he never got his BA. Isn't it marvelous? Yeah? It's very slow. Again, I think of a famous mathematician, two famous mathematicians, a man called Fermat and another man called Pascal. Some of you may have heard of Pascal. Pascal is known for a lot of things, but one of the things he's not known very well for is he discovered the basis of probability theory. Pascal and Fermat. How? A gambler that they both knew was playing a game and one of the people backed off. And he wrote a letter, I think it was to Pascal. Is there any way of resolving this bet? So Pascal wrote to Fermat. And the book I'm quoting for, it's a book, Bell, The Development of Mathematics. At the end of the page, having discussed this, he says, these two men in several months of uncommon sense figured out the basis of probability. Two geniuses. Fermat is famous in mathematics because he wrote down a theorem. There's no point in writing it down, but it's related to the fact that x squared plus y squared is equal to z squared in geometry. Can you prove it if you put in n here? And Pascal has a theorem about that nobody has managed to prove, and he claimed to have proved it, but he didn't write it down. Okay, so slow. And it's a terrific thing to discover that I'm slow because I'm human. I'm not slow because I'm stupid. When I was doing philosophy, nobody told me this. And it was very disconcerting. I recall the professor coming in doing the history of philosophy. The first day he came in and he did the pre-Socratic philosophers, a whole bundle of people from Homer, about 6 centuries of philosophy. We did it in a lecture. The next day he came in and he did Plato. And we packed away Plato. On the next day we did Aristotle. And What were we doing? Well, God, I don't know. It took Aristotle 18 years to figure out what was missing in Plato. Slowness is being human. And some of you may find that you have been abused right through your school days because people expect you to gallop through, say, 5 credits. I won't ask you how many of you have got this impression that I really must be very dull. I can only do 4 credits. I do 3 credits each year that I've done before, and it takes all my time. And I find out a little, and it's marvelous. Okay, so slow. And it's repetitious. Now, this is a very important point to think about. What do I mean, repetitious? It's important in that if you are serious, like the people I'm talking about, Pascal, Descartes, and so on, then you know you haven't figured it out properly yet. You're still surprisable. It doesn't become familiar. My model for repetition is, a lot of my models are in music. The great conductor Herbert von Karajan, he died about 2 years ago. Some of you surely have heard him conducting, yes? If you've any Deutsche Grammophon records, you're bound to have Herbert on some of them. He conducted the Berlin Philharmonic for about 30 years, 40 years. Last time I heard him, I was in England at the time, and he conducted Brahms's, I think it was his first symphony in the Albert Hall. And he was very elderly and crippled, and he had one of these walking things, so he could barely walk. And the plane was an hour late, but the audience waited, and he was helped out to the podium, and this crippled old guy, and then he stood up. He had a special thing to lean on, and then he conducted this symphony. No notes, nothing. Just marvelous. Now, repetition. He, in the early 70s, recorded Beethoven's 9 symphonies. And recording them, it takes an awful lot of splicing, replaying. He was at it for months, repeating Beethoven's 9 symphonies. At the end of the months, he was invited to Strasbourg. He was in Vienna, I think, at the time. And he was going to conduct the 3rd and 4th symphony. And a friend said, Herbert, how can you go to conduct these symphonies after all that? Oh, says Karajan, for me they're new symphonies. Yeah? The problem of repeating something. Now, the topic of our course, okay, it's I, or you might say me, if you speak normal Canadian English, me and God. I, God. Okay. It's a word. There are some people who just repeat the word, but it's not the same. Again, from music, I think of the great composer Mahler, who turn-of-the-century composer. Mahler's last word was Mozart. He had repeated it all his life. But he didn't know the meaning of it. That was the sense of this great man. And again, you've got the same business again. He grew up into, he didn't memorize the history of music. He grew up into it. He grew up very slowly. He was still growing in his old age. There's a marvelous account of an afternoon he spent with Freud, trying to get some insight into why he wrote the music this way. There's a sadness in it relating to his childhood, a number of his brothers and sisters that died. But one of the centers of his life was the word Mozart, or the man Mozart. So repetitiousness, we will be going around the same topic. This theorem will dominate, not this one, but the theorem we get will dominate our 22 hours. Repetitious, a diagram that may help you is that, okay, let's say the topic is I and God. That's the motion of the course. Okay? We're going round and round the one topic. There are courses in philosophy, in literature, in psychology, in various fields, in music, and you're always going forward in what I call a steeplechase course. This is at its very worst now, but it does happen, honestly. You may have to go to Harvard to find it. You gallop along for a few weeks, and then you're over this jump, the test. Then you forget all about that, and you gallop along, and you're over the next. And so on to the end of the course. And you'd be shocked out of your wits if you went into the last exam and found that none of this stuff was there. It was on the first week. How many of you would come out of the exam and say, that was desperately unfair? Huh? It's April and we did that in September. Yeah? What's going on? Well, I'm not sure. Okay, so repetitious. And basically we're going to find that, well, you're trying to listen to yourself and you may not have done that for quite a while. Okay. Trivial. And this will bring us on to our last point. Trivial, small, light-hearted, humorous, seemingly on factors that aren't what you came here for. I want a view of the universe and the history of religions. And this guy is making me do little puzzles. It's a bit of a joke, isn't it? Yeah? You may have a friend you meet after class and they say, well, what did you do in class? Well, he gave us this damn little puzzle to do. But I thought it was on religion. Well, so did I. Okay. Now, not only is it trivial, and there's a joke about the whole thing in that, yeah, we're going to muck around slowly, repetitiously, sort of get nowhere. If I get you to the beginning of the course by the end, I'll be very happy. Yeah? Sometimes a student comes and says, you know, I'm about ready to take this course. But also more directly, I like to throw in the odd joke, because it's very important to ease up and be human, and a joke is very good in that circumstance. When the situation is very bad, as it is in the modern university, then humor is vital. How many of you have a sense of that? Yeah? If you can't laugh, you won't get through the day. I was recalling this morning or yesterday in this regard the Czech invasion, or the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia in '68. I happened to be in touch with people in these revolutions. I remember living with 3 Hungarians who got out on their trains in the '56 revolution. Yeah, I'm that old. And in the '68 revolution, well, you know, the Russian tanks rolled in, and the dissidents produced a volume of essays in France, not in Czechoslovakia. And the preface was written by Jean-Paul Sartre. And Sartre wrote in the preface that, yeah, the Russians have held them down now and are holding them down now, but there is that tremendous element within the Czech culture. They can laugh. The Russians can't condemn humor, wit and humor. The possibility of laughter is the possibility of breaking through And it's very important in this course when you may have to break through. Now, some of you may stay. I brought ad-drop forms, by the way. If I can sign you all out, we can. Okay. But if you stay, you may find that humor does something for you. And I'm trying to justify myself now, because sometimes my jokes are sort of in poor taste, racist, etc. I was thinking tonight, some of my best Jewish jokes, I get them from my Jewish friends. An alcoholic friend phoned me up tonight, and he gave me a marvelous puzzle. What's the difference between an alcoholic and a drunk? Well, the drunk doesn't have to go to those terrible meetings. Okay. So that there is not only place for humor, as we'll see when we get to the text, but it's very vital. Now, a key thing about humor will emerge when we get to our theorem. Our theorem is really about the activity of interest, or desire in a deep sense. The trouble with each thing I'm saying here, as I think of it, is that this is very much like saying Mozart. What do I mean by desire? Well, it's what you are, and you may not have noticed. Huh? And our hearts are restless till they rest in thee, St. Augustine says. Yeah? How did he find that out? By an awful lot of slow, struggling, repetitious contemplation. He has that experience of take up and read, and he starts reading. Maybe I'll get you to read. It's one of the great problems of the 20th century. People don't read. Oh, they're well informed, but that's nothing to do with reading. Whether it's reading a book or reading the sad face of a friend. Okay, it's trivial and humorous. And that's my fifth and last point of encouragement, discouragement. We're reaching for a peak. Now, do I have to write in the other spelling? It's the peak. Okay, it's up here somewhere. I mentioned slowness. How far are we going to get? Not too far. Let's say this was a class in music, okay? Where would we be at the end of the 13 weeks? Yeah? I'm going to introduce you to the sonata form. Well, you'd scarcely know the sort of rough A-B structure and development and so on. You wouldn't have any idea of the sonata form structure of a movement in Beethoven. Not in 13 weeks. So we're reaching for a peak, but we're reaching for a peak, a glimpse. And I hope we'll get little glimpses, and that is part of the question of humor. Bernard Lonergan, the Canadian philosopher, theologian, remarks in his book Insight around page 670, every little insight is a glimpse of God. It's a peak. Have you laughed today? I remember once lecturing in York University to a group of, they were actually television people. And I lectured on laughter and humor, and one of the directors came to me at the end and he said, I can't say the holy name. Anyway, he said, Phil, I haven't laughed in years. I'll have to put in a lot of mms if I'm to express myself. It reminds me of the problem of discrete language in hymns in, say, religion. I was thinking this morning of that marvelous hymn, Stand Up and Praise the Lord. Some of you know that, don't you? Yes? And the problem is, you see, if you follow this business of you're not to discriminate, and you've got somebody there who's lost his legs in the war, well, then you can't sing Stand Up. And for somebody who can't talk, you can't say praise. So a lot of our hymns will have to be hums. Hum, 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 hum. And you can't say the Lord because, well, you know why. The lady? I don't know. Okay, so there's a limit to. Okay, so I'll get some of you to laugh before the end of the course, honestly. You're looking very serious. So a peak. At the peak, what's the function of teaching? What's my function here? Let's say I was teaching music. I know very little about Beethoven. When I think of von Karajan talking about Beethoven's symphonies, this guy is serious. He's been at Beethoven for 30, 40 years. And he's just astonished by Beethoven. When I was in England a couple of years ago, I heard an interview with Ashkenazy, who's a great Polish pianist and conductor, and the interview was running through various topics in music, and the interviewer said, well, what about Beethoven? And Ashkenazy said, I'm not going to say anything about Beethoven. So the problem of the peak is that unless you've climbed a bit, you may have no sense of the peak. Okay, what's the function of education? I'm here because I've climbed a bit, very slowly. I was a Jesuit for about 20 years, and the joke in Ireland about the Jesuits is that there's the joke about the mother talking to the parish priest about the son. A lot of the vocations in Ireland are the mother's vocation. The mother's talking to the priest about Johnny becoming a priest. And you can go into the ordinary clergy, and it takes 6 years, and the Dominicans take 8 years, and the Jesuits take 14. And the priest was explaining to the mother that these are the ways you become a priest. And he said, well, the Jesuits, you know, they take about 14 years. Oh, says the mother, I think Johnny should go into the Jesuits because he's very, very slow. Okay, you heard the story about the Irish emigrant landing in New York, not too bright. You see, we Irish can tell Irish jokes, like the Newfies joke is Newfoundland's joke about the rest of us. Anyway, he was in New York and writing home to his mother, and he penned it out, and he said, "Dear mother, I am writing this very slow because I know you can't read fast." All right, we're looking for a peak. At the peak, my function is being slow, but having had the opportunity. I've done this credit about 10 times. I'm a little ahead of you, and I can point up the hill. Just as if, and this is a problem in, say, somebody teaching music. Sometimes you find a professor of music lecturing on Beethoven, and somehow beating Beethoven down to manageable size. Somehow pretending that I'm up here and I'm talking about Beethoven and Goethe and Schiller, yeah, and I'm in control. That's madness. The normal professor, the serious professor, is somebody down here pointing up here. So, say I was talking about Beethoven, that's somebody up here. Now later I'll talk about Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. Yeah, they're up here. Aristotle, Aquinas. Incredible thinkers. Slow, but my heavens, what a pace they hit. And the theorem that I get to under topic 6 is a theorem that Aristotle figured out, and Thomas, and we'll get to it gradually. And it has to do with puzzling, the desire, and it has to do with what I symbolize by that: insight, jump, click. And one of the reasons why I tell jokes is that I know if you laugh, that at least you had one insight during the class. Yeah. Okay. Now, peak has another meaning, peaked, I was peaked, worn out, wan, tired out. And I may tire you out, yeah? And you have to figure out why. I may also frustrate you, like the student I mentioned that wanted desperately to know, please tell me what to memorize. Okay, there's another sense of peak that you will find in Abraham Maslow. Peak experiences is a topic in religion, peak experiences. But don't think of it as religious. These are experiences that Maslow says you should focus on. Experiences of being high. Now, I will mention some of those, like I've mentioned already, listening to say, Mahler, or listening to von Karajan, or watching von Karajan. Recently, I've been watching the three great tenors, Carreras, Domingo, and Pavarotti, singing in Rome. Anyone hear that tape or see that video? You saw it, didn't you? Yes. The three tenors singing together. It was just a marvelous experience, a peak experience. Now, I will mention, and in the text I mention, experiences that I find are terrific. But you have to find your own. And I hope you've got some. I can think of melodies today. I was thinking of 2 bars out of Schubert that I've been listening to for 40 years, out of Schubert's Serenade. And I haven't heard them yet, and they're marvelous. But you may have songs, Paul Simon's songs, or Barbra Streisand, Warm All Round, isn't that the latest hit? Or Another Day in Paradise, Phil Collins. Something that, yeah, displaces you, transforms you, spaces you out, gets you in touch with yourself. Yeah. You feel really real in a certain sense. So there's this element we have to focus on. Okay, but it has to be towards you. So you'll have my illustrations, and you'll get some frustrations out of my slow, repetitious, trivial, humorous illustrations. But you have to ask yourself, well, am I interested in reason and religious belief? Okay, well then, how are we doing? My God, I talk so much, don't I? It's the Blarney Stone. You all heard of the Blarney Stone, yeah? Actually, I never kissed the Blarney Stone. But I went up there once, and I looked down at it, and I looked at all the tourists. You see, the Blarney Stone, it's a stone up in a castle in County Cork, and you're supposed to get the gift of the gab if you kiss it. But to kiss it, you have to be held, and of course you have to pay £1 to do this, $3. You have to be held by the legs over the walls of the castle, and you kiss the Blarney Stone. It's marvellous what we do to tourists in Ireland. Okay, so we're getting on to topic 2, or number 2, the title and the topic. You're going to have a peek at what? Well, let's take the title. Okay, it's reason and religious belief. Four words, okay? Now, what is the topic? Well, let's look at this very slowly. Reason. Let me talk about the 4 words. Reason, belief, religious, and. That's a funny little word, isn't it? I bet some of you thought there were only 3 words in the title. Okay. The course will proceed thusly to invent a word. There is no such word. Is there any such word in Canadian English? Of course, we'll proceed by taking up the question of reason. What is reason? Well, then within reason, what is belief? Religious, it's an adjective qualifying belief. Well, then what is religious? And finally, how do they all fit together? Now, the problem here, and I want, gradually I'll get you to talk, I hope. I'm not sure how much you'll talk, since, you know, the camera will swing round on you and your mother will be able to see you. Or if you're not here, and the camera swings round and you've asked a question, people will notice that you're not here. God, I'm glad somebody's listening to me. Reminds me of the definition of an Irishman by Sam Beckett. You want the definition of an Irishman by Sam Beckett? Yeah? An Irishman is one who somewhere else is where he was. I think that's a marvelous definition. Work on it, slowly. Okay, I talked about this as if it was something we were going to study. Okay, we're going to study reason, then we're going to study belief, and then religion, and then and fit it all together. What am I talking about? What's this thing we're going to study? Let's start with reason. And I start with reason. Oh, come on, can't you smile even? Are you awake, Tim? Okay. All right, what is reason? Obviously, I mean, it's the first question in the course, isn't it? Yeah? Reason and religious belief. Okay, so let's find out what reason is. Isn't that a fair question? Yeah? What's reason? Isn't it a fair question? Yeah? Okay, so shouldn't I tell you what it is? I shouldn't, should I? Any reaction to that? Should I tell you what reason is? And, you know, the course goes, and I'll tell you what reason is tonight, and we'll... Yeah? All right, let me tell you what reason is. Let me give you a definition of reason, so-called. What is reason? Let me write it down. If I'd colored chalks, it would be better. It makes it more important, you know. Reason. Moving from premises. Notice the use of capital letters. It's terribly important to emphasize things. They say that Freud would not have been the same if they had dropped the capital letters from the German, you know. Some of these things in Freud, the nouns are just capital letters in German, that's all. Okay, moving from premises to conclusions. Okay, does that sound good? Come on, it does, doesn't it? I got a big book in the post today, and I won't tell you what it is because I might get sued for libel. And it's about $120 worth of symbols, and it's a study of reason. And it's a book in logic. And, all right, one of my exercises that you'll find when we get a little bit further in the book is look up the index of books on reasoning and see, is there a question mark. In other words, in the index, look up Q. Now, in this logic book, you have quantification, qualities, and so on. The word question doesn't occur. Okay, but I've given you a definition of reasoning that fits in with this book. Does it sound good? Have any of you written it down? Oh, you were in a previous class. Okay, reason is going from premises to conclusions. And to make it plausible, I should give you illustrations, shouldn't I? All right. And of course, the thing is to give you a male chauvinist illustration, which is in all the textbooks. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Isn't it amazing how they left the women out? And well, it's not. It doesn't startle the women anymore. Socrates is a man. I shouldn't say it. It's too funny. All right, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Okay? Now that's reasoning. Now you've got two premises. You've got a conclusion. Is that okay? Does that look good? Yeah? Doesn't it look fairly good? Yeah? Terrific. Yeah? So reasoning is going from premises to conclusions. And that's a definition of reasoning that you will find dominates the Western tradition since the condemnation of Aquinas. And it's dominant in certain books of Aristotle. But it's not Aristotle's view of reasoning. Okay, but I can give you that. You can write it down. You can memorize it. But is this what reasoning is? All right, let's switch a little bit. Let's say I wasn't talking about reason and religious belief, but say dogs and animal husbandry. Okay? So I said, well, before we get into this subject, I should define dogs. So I write down dog. Okay, five-legged animal. Is that a reasonable sort of, yeah? How do you feel about that? Weird, isn't it? Yeah. Spontaneously say, no way. Why? I have a dog at home. I see dogs on the street. Dogs are not five-legged animals. Now, here we're getting nearer to our topic. Our topic is reason. And just as you have a dog at home, how many of you have pet animals, cats, dogs, rock, plant? You have to soft talk the plant, keep it well. Okay, you have an animal at home that is a pet. You actually have reason at home. At least when you arrive home, or unless, if there are other people there, of course, there is reason at home. Okay, in other words, you have something we're talking about. Is that fair enough? You all have reason, haven't you? You found your way into this classroom, which is, can be tricky, can't it? You're groping around in the corridors of wisdom here, and where is this place? Duet. Okay, the point I'm making is that, our topic is reason, but where are the specimens? Your reason. Is that fair enough for starters? Yeah? You ask me what is reason, and then I say, well, okay, it's what you have been doing, badly, I know, badly, but still, doing occasionally since you were 2, 3, actually starts earlier than that, but let's, even the conventional notion, the age of reason. Okay, it emerged very definitely at the age of 3. Do you notice it in your brothers and sisters and children? What is reason? What emerges in the 3-year-old, it's not this. What emerges in the 3-year-old is this Yeah? How many of you can concede that a little bit? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, let's go back to the joke. When I'm telling a joke, or when you're being told a joke, you're alert, aren't you? Yeah? Unless you're a sergeant major or a Polak or whatever. I'm thinking of one of my favorite jokes is, yes, we have time for a joke. One of my favorite jokes is about the man, the New Yorker correspondent who got permission to interview the present Pope. And he was very anxious about it, and he started working out the right questions and what should I ask him, and brushing up his Italian and not sure what language, but he knew that this guy could, you know, talk 26 languages, so he'd risk English. So he flew to Rome, and then he taxied to the Vatican and eventually into the presence, and he sat down on a chair waiting for the Pope, and he sat on the edge of the chair very nervously, and the Pope appeared eventually, and he didn't know whether to fall on his face or fall on his knees or kiss his hand or kiss the floor. But he sat there, and the Pope sat down. He started off, well, Reverend, Holy, Almighty Father. He didn't know what to call him. Nervously he said, well, now, there's the problem of solidarity and the way the Polish government is moving. And the Pope leaned back and talked, and gradually the correspondent relaxed. After about 20 minutes, he said, you know, Holy Father, I came here all nervous, and now I'm quite relaxed. I'd like to tell you a Polish joke. Oh, says the Holy Father, but I am Polish. Oh, that's all right, he said, I'll tell you very, very slowly. All right. So, what is dominant in a joke? What's dominant is interest. You actually become interested. Is that not true? The normal person. Once somebody says, you know, you're listening to this stupid lecture from McShane, and he stops and he suddenly says, did you ever hear the one about that? And you wake up. Up till now you've been writing an essay for another course, but this, well, I might as well listen to the joke. It relaxes you, and you actually become human. You're actually present in the classroom for the first time in an hour. And you're listening to a flow. Okay, I'm not going to go into the philosophy of the joke, but I want to bring out the main point here about reason. You're listening to a flow which actually is at least a double narrative. It doesn't click. It's like a book that's open, and you have lines coming, but not on the same page. That's the structure of a good joke. You don't know where it's going. And you're puzzled, and let's put it in that sort of book diagram. You have a narrative that's on two planes, and it hits the punchline. And when it hits the punchline, that happens to you. Now, because you're not just a pure spirit, but you're incarnate, you're somatic, as the Greeks would say, you have a dimension of momentum, bodily momentum. You have molecular rhythms, and it depends on whether you're a Polak or an Irish person or whatever. The rhythms are different. So you're building up in the joke, and your spirit is reasoning towards the punchline. Your body's building up momentum, and it's very much like a bicycle on a hill. Your body can't get round the corner. And many of you have tried to turn a bicycle at right angles at the bottom of the hill. It doesn't work. So when you hit the punchline, there's this leap of insight, and then the soma shifts its energy to 22 facial muscles, and you have this explosion, which is laughter. It's the reverence of the soma for the flexibility of spirit. And that's why it's so important. It's a revelation. Now, I'm going to give you something to think of. In other words, I'm going to shift from the topic to a trivial trial. Okay? Give you something to chew on at the end of the class. Okay, is it a trivial trial? Well, it's a puzzle from an 11-year-old's examination in England. It was an examination they had in the English system to test people at the age of 11. So don't be embarrassed if you can't work it out. It's a very simple puzzle. I divide the alphabet in two, okay? A, B, C, D, E, F, dot, 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 dot. What does the dot, dot, dot mean? It means I haven't finished it, but I can. Can you? Many of you have seen this puzzle before. A few people. It's very tricky. But the problem is to be interested enough to start figuring it out. It's a sequence. What way am I dividing the alphabet? Now, after we come back, I will juggle with this, but you can juggle with it in between. There's a way in which we can get an awful lot of mileage out of this. You need one basic insight. It may take you hours. Don't panic if you don't get it. I'll try and help you when we get back. There's a sense in which what we're looking for in this course is a view of life, the ups and the downs, and why. Okay, now I could go on to give you the next letter. Will I give you the next letter? Would you like the next letter before I pause? Yeah? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Do you want another letter? Was that a help to anyone? And the next letter is H. Is that a help? Let's leave it at that. Okay.